Is it still illegal to perform an autopsy on a living person?
Yeah, it has definitely been a minute since I last reviewed a season of House, but rest assured, I am still getting through the show, albeit at a snail's pace right now because work has been pounding my ass like a jackhammer on espresso, but we won't get into that. Not to mention, every single episode seems to have 24 episodes, which is not something you really see nowadays. You'd be lucky if your ass got greenlit for one season, let alone 12 episodes, let alone renewed for multiple other seasons, depending on how hard you blow your boss. But yeah, I finally came around to finishing season 2, and I'm just gonna say it, I don't think it was really good. In fact, I'd say it was pretty bad. The reason for that being, a lot of the characters in this season just do things that don't make a whole lot of sense and make them really unlikable. From season 1, it's clear that House isn't a show that's afraid to harp on touchy subjects, but the ones that they tackle here in season 2, some of them, just borderline on the edge of being really, really weird and creepy. And I don't mean that in the good way. Like, some of the stuff they tackle here is so fucking wild, bro. It's clear that this shit would never have aired today. Though both season 1 and season 2 had their fair share of questionable scenarios, season 2 takes things to a whole different level. Like, episode 1 starts off with them contemplating whether they should save the life of a death row inmate or not. Should they expend resources on this person that's about to die in like the next 48 hours, effectively pissing into a volcano with all their resources and money? It was an interesting moral dilemma, and I love that. I wanted more of that. However, as the season progressed, we just were forced into these moral dilemmas that didn't need to be there. And because they didn't need to be there, it made situations that felt really, really contrived and forced our characters to do things that they wouldn't normally do, at least from what we got to know of them in season 1. It just does things that felt really, really out of character. And the stuff that they do is really bad. It makes them super unlikable. And I'll get to the specifics of what I mean later in the video. First, I want to talk about what I think this season did really well, which was mostly centered around House. Yet again, he is here carrying the show, especially in season 2. He carried the fuck out of this season. I loved everything that they did with him here, especially the last episode. Some Inception shit going on there. And then the 2 episodes with Foreman were also amazing, but I guess I should start off by talking about the plot line with Stacy, because that's the main thing that we left off with in season 1 going into season 2. Now, I thought she was going to be a permanent addition to the cast, but that permanency lasted about as long as Concord did, because she was gone midway through the season. Now, I did love the payoff of that plotline, though I don't feel like it should have been 12 episodes long, but it got us to learn a lot about House. Exploring his love life and how he deals with love in general was really interesting. I really like that. Now, we know that House isn't one to shy away from intruding other people's privacy. We see that with his cases going into, like, going in is using that term really loosey-goosey. It's, they're breaking in. They're breaking into other people's homes illegally to obviously try to help them out, figure out what's wrong with them. He's doing it for a more altruistic reason, though it's more so an ego thing. He wants to solve a puzzle, you know, but you get what I'm saying. He's doing it for the betterment of the people at the end of the day. But here we see him break into Stacy's office, clearly for no other reason than his own selfish means, to get a hold of her file and see whether she actually had feelings for him or not. Now, that's not uncharacteristic of House. He's obviously want to do something like that, whatever feeds his selfish desires, right? It is wild seeing the lengths that House will go to make Stacy cheat on Mark. Now, I don't have a problem with House in this specific scenario, or any for that matter, because he was never that likable to begin with, or he wasn't written to be likable, but he kind of is in his own weird little way. So I never really had a problem with that, and that's where the payoff comes in. Because here we see at the end of everything he did with this plotline, he rejects Stacy. Now, I don't think it's because he felt guilty that he got in the way of Mark and her relationship, because he should have felt guilty a lot sooner than that. And I don't think it was for Stacy either, because if House truly valued that, if he truly valued Stacy's happiness, he would accept her offer. Because this is the happiest she's ever been. Every time we see her smiling, being all giddy, all the happiest she's ever been is when she's with House. Yet he ended up rejecting her anyway. Now I think that's because he did it ultimately again for selfish reasons. He's scared of change. He doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to go back to the past. What's done is done. He wants to stay how he is because he's content with how he is and who he is at the moment. We know that House does in fact love Stacy, but if he wants to have a life with her, if he wants to accept her into his life, he has to change. He has to be open to that possibility. But we know that he doesn't want that. So no matter what he says in that situation there, saying, I want what's happiest for you and whatnot, it's mostly for himself. This specific moment, this specific decision makes everything in the final episode hit so much better because he's finally open to progressing as a person, not just as House, but fundamentally changing who he is and becoming more, well, human. Now as for Stacy as a character and her relationship with House, yeah, I can't say I was the biggest fan. Stacy herself, I just automatically disliked her entire existence when she decided to cheat on Mark because I just take that shit seriously. I don't have any respect for cheaters whatsoever. I don't care what situation you're in, what the reason is. There is no justification in my eyes for cheating. So I just automatically disposed her like trash. And when it came to her relationship with House, I just didn't feel like it existed. I know they had this whole history of what happened, but the way they interact and everything feels so fake. And maybe it's because they're just so awkward and so weird in their own little ways that I just don't feel it like a normal human interaction or relationship. But it just didn't feel real. There were no butterflies flying, sunshines and rainbows. There were more sparks in a wet match than their situationship. I can't quite pinpoint what it is about it exactly, but it just doesn't feel like they're two people that would have gotten together, like a match made in League of Legends. It just doesn't happen. Ironically, I think that Cuddy and House have a much more interesting dynamic. When I think about House and Stacy, it just feels really superficial, and there's more chemistry before the Big Bang than between them two. But enough about Stacy, let's talk about the 2 episodes with Foreman. I think as a duo, these 2 episodes worked really, really well, despite some of the things that Foreman did in there, which I will get to, but like on the whole, the episodes were phenomenal. Throughout the series so far, we've come to understand why House avoids direct personal interactions with his patients, or at least he tries his best to. That emotional connection could cloud his judgment. Once he starts the care, he can't take the same calculated risks. He sees emotions not as strengths but as liabilities, something that gets in the way of his clear and logical thinking. But in this episode, or rather I should say these 2 episodes, House is forced to confront that very reality. It's no longer just a patient's life on the line because this time it's a core crew member. Foreman is here on the line as well. That personal stake adds a profound emotional weight to the story, unlike anything we've seen before. Throughout these 2 episodes, this isn't the same House that we're used to. He's not as quirky, he's not as bombastic as he used to be. He's this kind of timid and shallow version of himself, where he's scared to make one wrong move because, well, he could lose somebody that he really values. And it's not just House, because every character kind of takes a step back. There's this very heavy undertone to the episode that I really, really like. And that's exacerbated even more by Foreman's declining mental and physical health throughout these 2 episodes. The dude at the beginning, he's like, he just took a whiff of Joker's laughing gas, and then by the end, he's like a junkie who just found the meth leprechaun. Like, the way he just stares down some of these characters is genuinely quite terrifying. Like, he's about to rip open their hearts and feed it to them. Yeah, he definitely had some screws loose, and that's also evident through his behavior and some of the stuff he does, which I didn't like, but I will, again, talk about that after I talk about the last episode of the season. So the finale opens up like your typical Patient of the Week episode. However, really quickly, out of fucking nowhere, House gets... yeah, some rando just straight up barges into the office and shoots him. I mean, House has enemies, but I didn't think they would go take such drastic measures. And nothing's really explained about what happens to this dude other than he got away. So, I don't know. I guess that just happens. But instead of lingering on the fact that House got shot and kind of needed to not die, The episode continues on, and House largely seems unconcerned with his own situation, instead opting to solve the puzzle of the previous patient that he was working on, pretending like he never got shot, like it's just your typical Thursday afternoon. But soon as House is recovering, they pull up the person that shot him right beside him in the same room. Now, granted, he is handcuffed, but whoever came up with that idea is fucking nuts, okay? I wonder what could possibly go wrong in that situation. And that's the first moment where I really found out that something is not right here, because nobody in their sane mind would do this, right? So yeah, we soon find out that the whole thing is basically his life flashing before his eyes, in his head. Now, normally what would happen in this situation is somebody recounts their entire life. They see it all in the span of like 1 second, and then they hit the gutter or go into rest in peace mode, right? Well, that's not what happens here. House gets transported to this fucking domain expansion in his head, and he basically just confronts himself. So on one side you have Dr. House, the cold, unfeeling, logical thinker, and on the other side he sees what he could have been or who he was in the past, the personification of Gregory House, the person. So throughout the entire episode, alongside the patient that House is treating, patient in quotes, we have this Tom and Jerry back and forth between Dr. House and Gregory House, where Gregory has him by the scruff saying, "Why I oughta knock some sense into you," as an attempt to try and get into that closed off mind of his. Gregory wants him to change. Dr. House doesn't want to change. So there has to be a way in which he can get through to him, right? So he makes him realize that the only one that's making himself feel miserable is himself. He has no one else to blame. He's using his leg as an excuse to bypass the rules, do what he wants, but at the end of the day, he's only hurting himself and he's hurting others. All these patients that he's treating, making them, like, objectifying them as puzzles, he's not doing it to get satisfaction out of helping others. He's using that cause or that feeling as an excuse to give his life meaning, because he can't find any meaning in it himself. And that's really what makes this whole episode special. I fucking loved this episode. Amazing stuff. And the moment when House said sorry to himself for how he treated himself, when he slowly turned around and there was just a tear trickling down his eye. Phenomenal. That was so good. And at the end in the car, when he finally chooses to keep life, and then he wakes up, he snaps out of it after killing the patient, and he's like, "I'm ready to change. Give me the ketamine treatment. Treat my leg. No more excuses. I want to improve." Absolute cinema. Like, that was phenomenal stuff, okay? The plotline with House was fucking amazing. If it just focused on that, I would have been so happy. But unfortunately, the rest of the season did some insanely questionable stuff, which is what I'm going to get into now. This section of the video probably has more buildup than Cyberpunk right now, and hopefully it doesn't flop as bad. So, as I alluded to before in the beginning of the video, this season made everybody it made everybody unlikable. Chase, Cameron, Foreman, Stacy, everybody became either disgusting, unbearably annoying, outright awful, or all of the above. I don't understand some of the things they did here. So let me just get into it. Stacy, we already talked about. She's a fucking cheater. Lost all respect for her. Out of here. So let's talk about Cameron. Okay, Cameron I already didn't like in season 1, and though she isn't as bad here, she makes some really stupid and outright comical decisions, and ones that no sane human would make, let alone a licensed professional doctor such as her. So in one of the episodes, I think it was episode 4, in one of the early episodes, she meets a junkie, and this junkie's like, "Hey bro, you know that thing they sell on the streets, it's called the crystal? Yeah, highly illegal by the way. Yeah, that shit's good. It makes you feel happy, all giddy inside. It'll knock your socks off, put your fucking feet in the air, swinging around. Happy go lucky to something," okay? He says some random bullshit, and then Cameron's like, "Fuck, I gotta try this now." Like, what do you mean? What are we actually doing here? And I'm not joking. Like, she actually goes out, takes crystal meth, How do you go from being clean, never taking drugs in your life, to just doing meth all of a sudden because some junkie said it makes him feel good? That's like me going from never having whacked the hammer to doing full-on BDSM. Like, that is not how real life works. It does not compute like that, okay? She should have gotten booted out the hospital, license revoked and everything. I don't know how she still kept her job after that. It makes no sense. And then to take things even further, she fucking took Chase and just screwed him. Like, forget putting yourself in danger, making poor decision for your own health. Why are you bringing somebody else into this? I know she's high and whatever, but that's not an excuse, okay? And Chase, I mean, he should have had some more self-respect or restraint in that moment because he can clearly see that she is off her gourd. It makes no sense for her to be acting this way. And even worse than that, they did it unprotected. So Chase could have just outright caught an STD. No regard for herself, no regard for others. It just made no sensible sense. There's no other way to put it. Cameron just made the most idiotic decision I've ever seen on television. And then we have Foreman. You know, as this season was going on, I thought he'd be saved from this lunacy, but oh boy, was I wrong here. So he plagiarizes a paper that Cameron wrote, okay? Now that on its own isn't the worst thing in the world, okay? It automatically makes him really unlikable and kind of a cheapskate, but we can look past that, right? If he apologized, which he didn't. In fact, Cameron brought him to the side and asked him directly, we both make mistakes, okay? We were both in the wrong. She even, like, puckered him up. Okay, she was even admitting that she did some wrong and treated him wrong for plagiarizing her work, which she was justified in feeling the way she did, by the way, and acting whichever way she would. So she brings him to the side and tells him, we're both adults here, right? If we want to continue working together and being friends, we just have to both apologize and move on like grown-ups. Spoiler alert, Foreman had different plans. Not only did he straight up say, we are not friends. Okay, dickhead, calm down. He goes on to dig his own grave, make things even worse, by saying he has nothing to apologize for. Fuck you? Fuck you. This is the most detestable behavior I've seen in a while. I was fuming when Foreman said that. I could not believe the words that were coming out of his mouth. And it doesn't stop there. No. As if this whole situation wasn't already in the fucking trenches. He makes it even worse by, after he gets sick, Cameron tries to help him out, right? What does he do? He grabs an infected needle. She was wearing this protective suit to help him out, right? They start bickering like a fucking married couple. And Foreman stabs Cameron with an infected needle. That is murder. Attempted murder in plain sight. Like, she could have died from that. And he had no remorse whatsoever. At the end, he did apologize. But, man, what is going on here? I don't care if he was sick. I don't care if half his brains were blown out. Okay, he was lucid enough and in control enough, conscious enough, to not make such a stupid decision. Such an illegal decision. Such an immoral decision. His behavior, it just vexes me. Everything that Foreman did just felt so uncalled for, so out of nowhere, and very uncharacteristic of him. I know we didn't get really friend-to-friend moments with them much, but to go from the Foreman we knew to this absolute ding buffoon of a dickhead, the progression just didn't feel right. It's like we had point A and we just skipped to point C and point B is just missing. I don't know. This whole situation felt way too contrived to force out a conflict that could have been there if there was better progression leading up to that, but this here just did not work for me, even though I did like those 2 episodes with him a lot. And finally, we have Chase. Definitely the less egregious of the two, but still, he kind of made a decision he shouldn't have. And though he did make that decision, it looked like he didn't enjoy making that decision. So he kind of gets a pass, and of course, if you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. He ends up kissing a cancer patient that happens to be a little girl. Now I know one of the main draws of House is addressing the morally gray, but there's kind of there's no gray about this. So the context is this little kid is dying and she doesn't know if she's going to survive, and her dying wish is to see what it's like to kiss a boy. My main issue is, why would you even make a situation like that to begin with? You could have made other morally gray situations that could have been as compelling. Why did that have to be her dying wish? Because no matter which way you spin it, it's still a little girl kissing an adult. Even though, obviously, it looked like Chase didn't enjoy it, so that was great. But you're still showing that happening on screen, you know what I mean? So rather than it being a moral dilemma that needed to be solved, because literally nothing came out of that, Chase didn't progress as a character, it didn't change anything for him, the little girl remained mostly the same, and she got saved in the end, so it didn't matter. They just made that situation to see what Chase would do? I don't understand. Like, imagine being the parents and finding out this doctor just kissed your, 12-year-old child because she asked them to. He is the adult in that situation. He should have done what was right. And what was right was acting like a responsible adult that wouldn't be a creep. And I know he didn't act creepy about it, but it is still a creepy situation that the writers wrote in. And that's my main problem. Because this is not an isolated incident, okay? We have another scene, another episode where it literally starts off with, let's just say, some kinky role play that starts with the R word that can't be used on YouTube, otherwise that will be shut down immediately. And then there was another situation in episode 15 where there's this 15-year-old girl that is part of the model industry. Now obviously it is very exploitative, and that's just a fact of life, unfortunately. However, they make the whole situation way more weird than it needed to be. So we learn later on that this girl had an affair with her dad, and it turns out that it wasn't actually the dad that came off on her, it was her doing it. She drugged him so that she can R-word him, and it turns out she's also 15. And it turns out she's also not a girl. So, weird ass situation going on there. But throughout that entire episode, you have the main crew members just sexually talking about her. It's just so weird. It's so weird. I don't know what the writers are cooking in the department here. It is some creepy ass writing. Like, I don't know if the writing team just decided to just fuck it and throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, and see how people reacted to how disgusting they can make these situations. But yeah, seeing this through a lens in 2025 is kind of insane, and none of this would have aired ever, like I said before. It is wild seeing what went on television during that period. But yeah, that's about all I have to say. The remaining episodes of the season were your typical patient of the week stuff, like in House Season 1. So not much to say there. I think if they really just focused on the House plotline, condensed the season down, it did not need to be 24 episodes. If they just condensed it down, focused on the House stuff, focused on the Foreman stuff, and just didn't make everyone detestable or stupid, it would have been just so much better. It could have been easily better than the first season, but I can't say with a good conscious mind that it was. It was, in fact, not only not better, it was a big step down for me, and made me not like the characters as much, which is kind of not a good thing if you're making a show. The exception to that rule being House. I really adore his character now, much more than I did in Season 1. With that being said, I'm giving House Season 2 a 4.5 out of 10. But yeah, that's about it. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, or don't, and I'll see you all in the next one. See ya.